I didn't wake up that morning expecting a war. Not with the HOA, not with a woman in a neon pink blazer, and definitely not over a square of grass I'd mowed, watered, and taken care of for years. But trouble has a strange way of finding you when you least expect it, especially when it comes packaged in perfume and entitlement. Started small, just a glimpse from the porch. I was drinking coffee. Duke, my golden retriever, was lying next to me, and the world was quiet. Then she appeared. Karen, the woman who walked like she owned the neighborhood, strutting in heels that clacked like a warning siren. She didn't take the sidewalk. She didn't take the street. Nope, she headed straight across my lawn, cutting a clean diagonal path through the middle like she was taking a shortcut through a public park. Her tiny dog paused on the green and, well, you can guess. My jaw clenched. She didn't apologize, didn't look embarrassed. She was scrolling her phone, completely unbothered as her dog left a steaming gift on the grass. That was the first incident. By the end of the week, it wasn't an accident anymore. She walked across it every single morning, sometimes alone, sometimes with other HOA board members, sometimes dragging her dog like an accessory. They treated my yard like the neighborhood's private runway. I tried to be polite. The first time I addressed it, I stepped outside and said, "Morning. Quick heads up, this is actually private property." She didn't even stop walking, just tilted her sunglasses down and said, "We've always walked this way." That was a lie, a bold, confident, HOA-backed lie. So I tried something small, wooden markers on the edge of the grass. Nothing aggressive, just a gentle boundary. They vanished overnight, removed, not blown away, not knocked over, pulled out. By who? I knew, but knowing and proving are two different monsters. Then came the HOA newsletter shoved in my mailbox. Homeowners must maintain pristine lawn conditions. Brown patches reflect poorly on community aesthetic. Under it, a photo of my yard. The brown patches were from her heels. An hour later, the HOA president called me like I was a delinquent teenager. "We've received concerns about your lawn." "My lawn," I said. "Your board member is walking through it." He didn't even acknowledge it. "Please resolve the issue or fines will be applied." Fines. For damage I didn't cause. That was my breaking point. I wasn't going to argue with people who believed their own invented rules. I didn't move miles away from the city to be babysat by a committee. So I handled it the way my grandfather taught me when I bought this land. A boundary doesn't need to be a fence. Sometimes it's just a solid wooden landscaping block, low, heavy, sturdy. Farmers use them all the time. They sit a few inches above the ground, visible enough to anyone who's paying attention, and strong enough to stop a vehicle that shouldn't be driving where it doesn't belong. So, I placed one on the exact corner where Karen's BMW loved to cut across the grass when she was too impatient to stay on the road. Visible, legal, on my property. 2 mornings later, the silence of the neighborhood shattered. Metal crunching, tires skidding. A scream so dramatic it could have won an award. Duke barked before I even got off the porch. When I ran into the yard, I stopped dead. Karen's white BMW had plowed straight into the wooden block. The entire front end was crumpled like tissue paper. Steam poured from the hood. Plastic bits were scattered everywhere. And Karen, dressed in her usual eye-burning pink, was pacing around like she was auditioning for HOA Gone Wild. You did this," she shrieked at me. "You tried to destroy my vehicle." "Karen," I said calmly, "why were you driving through my yard?" "This isn't your yard," she barked. "This is a community path. It's literally grass. It's a path for me." Before I could respond, sirens echoed through the neighborhood. Police cars, 3, then 5, pulled into the driveway. Officers stepped out, confused, like they'd been called to a crime scene instead of a tantrum. Karen sprinted to them. "He set a trap. He tried to kill me," she screamed. "Arrest him." One officer walked over to me, rubbing his forehead as if he already knew where this was going. "Sir, what happened?" I pointed at the ground. "That block is on my property." She drove over the lawn. Karen stomped. Because I always drive this way. The officer tapped on his tablet, pulled up the neighborhood map, and his eyebrows raised. Ma'am, this is 100% his private lot. You have no right to drive here. Her face froze. Another officer knelt beside the block. This is just a landscaping anchor. It's visible. It's legal. Visible. Karen hated that word. She tried switching tactics again. He's hostile. He's aggressive. He's been targeting me. I looked at Duke, who was literally lying on the grass wagging his tail, and wondered what aggression she was talking about. The officers didn't buy it. Still, Karen wasn't done embarrassing herself. She stomped around the smashed BMW, kicking parts, crying into her phone, waving her arms like a malfunctioning traffic sign. One officer coughed a laugh when she slipped in the mud. She glared at him so hard I thought his badge might melt. And then she turned to me with a voice dripping venom. I'm going to ruin you. HOA will handle you. But the funniest moment came when she demanded an officer drive her home because her BMW was totaled. Not arrested, just abandoning the crime scene she created. The police wrapped up. They photographed everything. Tire marks, impact angle, the boundary line of my property. All of it clearly proving one fact. She had been trespassing. But the HOA? They didn't see it that way. The next morning, a letter awaited me. They weren't apologizing. They weren't acknowledging trespassing. They weren't even considering responsibility. They were accusing me of creating an unsafe property environment for HOA members. I laughed, out loud, at the mailbox. This wasn't about the lawn anymore. Not about a BMW or boundaries. It was about control. And Karen wasn't just coming for revenge. She was coming for a war. And I was ready. The day after Karen's BMW died a dramatic death on my lawn, I expected silence. Maybe embarrassment. Maybe, if I was really lucky, the HOA backing off for a while. Instead, Karen showed up with reinforcements. I was working in the garage when I heard the sound of people shuffling outside. Not the quiet footsteps of neighbors passing by. Heavier, organized, performative. I stepped out to see Karen standing on the sidewalk with two HOA board members behind her. Arms crossed, clipboards in hand like they were about to conduct an exorcism. Karen pointed her pen at me like it was a weapon. We need to discuss your violation. My what? Unauthorized hazardous object placement on community access terrain. That's my yard. Not according to our reinterpretation of the boundaries. I blinked. Your reinterpretation? She thrust a paper toward me. We have reason to believe the area you claim as private lawn is part of the neighborhood easement. No, it isn't, I said. The cops literally confirmed it yesterday. We don't recognize police property assessments, she snapped. The HOA men nodded like they were backing a queen. I stared at them. So, let me get this straight. You don't recognize the police. We recognize HOA authority, Karen corrected. Not untrained municipal opinions. Municipal opinions. Wow. I walked right up to the edge of the grass and said, Karen, your car was on my property. You drove into something that belonged there. She inhaled dramatically like she was absorbing oxygen for a monologue. That was a targeted attack. A hostile act. A violation of HOA safety standards. And we've decided to fine you. One of her board members handed me a paper. $50? I said. Oh, that's per day, Karen added sweetly. Until the hazard is removed. I folded the paper and handed it back. No. What do you mean no? She demanded. I mean no. I'm not paying a fine for you driving through my yard. Her face turned pink. Pink enough to match her suit. Then she tried something new. Something desperate. Well, she said slowly, if you refuse to comply, we'll escalate. Legally. Great, I said. See you there. Karen blinked. She wasn't expecting that. But she recovered fast. Don't underestimate me. I have influence in this neighborhood. People follow my lead. People follow you, I said. Because they're afraid you'll fine them for breathing wrong. One of the board members gasped, clutching his clipboard like I had slapped him. Karen smiled coldly. This isn't over. I watched them walk away, their clique marching like a confused parade. Duke sat beside me, head tilted, probably wondering why humans were so weird. But the battle wasn't just about confrontation. It was about strategy. And Karen? She escalated first. That evening, I returned from walking Duke to find something new on my lawn. Yellow caution tape, running across the edge of the grass, with a notice of investigation planted in the middle like a flag. Karen had turned my yard into a crime scene. I tore the tape down and tossed it in the trash. That was when my neighbor, old Mr. Patterson, stepped outside. He shook his head. "She's lost it," he muttered. "She's been telling everyone you're a danger to the community." "A danger?" I said. "I installed a block. She said you set a trap to kill her BMW on purpose." Her words. I sighed. "What are the neighbors saying?" He smirked, mostly wondering why she was driving on your lawn in the first place. That gave me hope. The next morning, Karen arrived again, but not with HOA members this time. With a landscaper. She was pointing and gesturing wildly. "This whole area. Flatten it. Remove anything he installed. The HOA gives permission." The landscaper looked unsure. "Ma'am, I can't alter private property." "This isn't his property," she snapped. "It's community access." I walked outside. "Touch anything," I said to the landscaper. "And you're trespassing." He held up his hands. "Nope, I'm out." Karen screamed something unintelligible as he drove off. But even that wasn't the breaking point. The real breaking point came when she tried to get the city involved. A code enforcement officer showed up at my door the next day. We got a report of unsafe landscaping structures causing traffic hazards. I took him to the lawn. He inspected the wooden block, nodded and said, "This is fine." "That's what the police said," I replied. He shrugged. "Then it's resolved." Karen watched from across the street, arms folded, jaw clenched, vibrating with rage. The moment the officer left, she marched into my yard, again, to scream at me. "You think you won? You think this is over?" "Karen," I said calmly, "you totaled your own car. You caused it. You trespassed." She jabbed a finger at me. "I am going to SUE you. And when I'm done, the entire HOA is going to vote you out of this neighborhood. You can't vote out a homeowner. We'll find a way." But fate decided to intervene for me. Behind her, one of the officers from the crash pulled up. He stepped out and said, "Ma'am, I need a statement from you regarding the incident." Karen whirled around. "I already gave a statement. I need a corrected one. Your insurance is disputing liability." Her face drained of color. He continued, "They reviewed the police report. Because you were driving on private property, you're fully responsible for the damages." Karen looked like she'd been shot. And, he added, "Your insurance also wants to know why you repeatedly entered this property after warnings." Her jaw dropped open so wide you could have tossed a baseball into it. I stood there silently. She wasn't just losing the battle. She was losing the war. The officer handed her paperwork. "Also, the homeowner may pursue trespassing charges if you continue entering the lawn." Karen stared at me, then the officer, then her smashed BMW, still sitting at the repair shop somewhere like a wounded soldier. She didn't scream this time, didn't argue, didn't throw a tantrum. She just whispered, "This isn't fair." For the first time since this insanity began. She looked small, without the HOA behind her, without her BMW, without her power. The officer left. Karen stood there for a long moment. Then she turned around and walked away slowly, quietly, like someone who finally realized the world didn't bend to her. The next morning, an HOA envelope arrived again. But this time it wasn't a fine. It was a notice. HOA member Karen has temporarily stepped down from her position pending investigation. I smiled. Duke wagged his tail. And my lawn stayed peaceful. For the first time in weeks, Karen stayed off it. Because sometimes, the loudest neighbor learns the hardest lesson. And sometimes, a simple wooden block teaches it better than words ever could.